So by scanning the QR code, the consumer must has the right to have all the information about the product.
Welcome to Clothing Culture, a fashion industry podcast at the intersection of technology and innovation. I'm Emily Lane.
And I'm Bret Schnitker. We speak with experts and disruptors who are moving the industry forward and discuss solutions to real industry challenges.
Clothing Culture is produced by Stars Design Group, a global design and production house with more than 30 years of experience. Welcome back to another episode of Clothing Culture. Today, we are following up on a series of conversations that we've been having with regards to carbon neutrality. We had the opportunity while we were traveling to France earlier this year for the AI Summit and the World Retail Congress to meet Giulio Salgaro from Edmond Climate Network, who has been very invested in creating a solution that really is an answer to the EU's race to carbon neutrality and their push for transparency. Today, we're kind of going to break down a little bit of what is on the horizon, some of those challenges, and some of the solutions that are being presented.
Yeah, the Green Deal and Europe is certainly ahead of the U.S. with respect to the drive for all aspects of sustainability. Certainly, Europe for a long time has focused on carbon neutrality and carbon transparency. Now they're officially recognizing it in a variety of different products. And for those listening that aren't familiar with it in Europe, it'd be great to hear from Giulio we've heard these terms thrown around like digital passport and carbon neutrality. And if you could fill us in a little bit on what that exactly means for someone that doesn't really understand it completely, and what the ramifications look like for Europe for 2026.
Yes, sure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the experience that we have now maturing in Europe with you. You know, as you anticipated, Bret, the European Commission has released multiple regulations in the field of sustainability. Actually, the landscape is not represented by one big regulation, but is represented by multiple sub-regulations. And these create a very fragmented landscape, and it is a little bit difficult right now for companies to effectively and navigate through them. Just to name the majority, the main, most important regulations, we are talking about at least 10 different regulations. One is, as you anticipated, is the digital product passport, but the other one is the eco design of the product. Another one is the extended responsibility of the producer for the end of life of the product. Another one is the corporate sustainability due diligence directive. Another one is the corporate sustainability reporting directive. Another one is the green claim and textile labeling. So there are many.
Wow.
There are many.
And so
I
much
have
to coordinate.
only indicated a few of them, the main one, because it is very complex. So companies, as I said before, are finding this landscape very difficult, and there are a lot of companies, and we are one of them, that we are providing solution for companies. Specifically, all these regulations have the goal to push companies to, first of all, measure their environmental footprint of their production. Secondly, to push them to reduce the environmental footprint, the impact on the environment. Specifically, you probably have heard the term that is carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is the footprint that a company release during their operation. Normally, the carbon footprint of a company is measured, at least based on the different kind of protocols. Specifically, I'm referring to the GHG protocol, greenhouse gases protocol, is measured under 3 different dimensions. One is the scope 1, then there is the scope 2 and scope 3. Scope 1 is the carbon footprint directly emitted by the company during their operation. So let's imagine that the company has its own facility to produce a specific product and release, by doing this operation, greenhouse gases. This is scope 1. Second scope is scope 2. This represents the carbon footprint related to the energy that are acquired by the company in order to run their operation. So this is a third-party carbon footprint coming from the energy provider. And third, which is the main one, is the scope 3. Scope 3 is the carbon footprint coming from the upstream part of the supply chain and to the downstream part of the supply chain. So the upstream part goes from the raw material. Then there is the activity to process the raw material. Then there are the part related to the material production and the cutting and finishing, the laundry, once we talk about apparel, till to arrive to the finished product. And later there is the down part of the supply chain that related to the shipment of the product till to arrive to the hand of the consumers. Just to give a sense of what we are talking about, normally companies, at least in Europe so far, they have measured scope 1 and 2 emissions, which unfortunately, it is a starting point, but normally, based on different kind of studies, scope 1 and 2 represent no more than 10% of the total greenhouse gases of the company. So that's why all these upcoming regulation in Europe, and most of them will enter in force between 2025 and 2028, will push companies to measure scope 3 emission. So this is not only a matter of measure, but is a matter of pushing the companies to understand what are in details the different kind of operations that are before the product arrive into their distribution center in order to actively reduce the carbon footprint. I take a pause because maybe I stop me when because we can really talk for hours.
Yeah, but that's fascinating. And when you look at that, I remember when California initiated Prop 65, and there were all these long regulations, and the ability for both large and small companies to adopt all the requirements of Prop 65 was pretty overwhelming. They finally made a exception or whatever, saying, hey, if you can't fit all the Prop 65, you're not totally positive, you at least have to post something saying, your product does not comply with Prop 65. And many times with regulations like this, sometimes they're so overwhelming for organizations to adopt.
Impossible to navigate, really.
Well, it's challenging. We've been talking about supply chain transparency for years in our industry, and just tracing minerals and metals and all these things to source have been really, really complicated. There's just not a lot of there's not a ton of ability to do that through a very complex and vast supply chain globally. And so it's interesting, whenever we talk about sustainability and we talk about eco-friendly initiatives, we have to recognize this is a journey. I believe that it starts a little messy, but you've got to start. You just can't ignore it. And the great thing that you guys have is you've got a way to help simplify part of the process. I can imagine as a company sits down and hears this, as you've so eloquently stated this, they're like, how the hell am I going to do that? And so why don't you talk to us a little bit about what your software does in this very complex situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how you go about quantifying all of these various phases.
Absolutely, sure. As we said, we are Edmond Climate Network is a digital company that operates in the field of sustainability. I have an experience of more than 20 years in the fashion industry, and together with my colleagues, we have created a system, a digital platform actually, that really is focused on fashion. As we said, measure the carbon footprint is a very complex exercise, so we decided to be vertical on fashion because fashion production is a very complex supply chain. People that are not familiar with the fashion industry, maybe they think that is something only very simple, but in reality is one of the most complex industry in the world. Our solutions allow companies to immediately have an understanding of what is their impact in their supply chain. How we do it? We did it. We have created multiple different software. Each software is dedicated to one product category. So we have a software for pants, a software for denim, a software for shirts, a software for dresses, a software for sweaters, a software for footwear, handbag. Why? Because each single product has its own production process. During these years, we have mapped every single production process of every single product categories, and we have performed multiple measurements about the carbon footprint of the different kind of equipments that are normally used in this phase of production. Based on this, we have created metrics between the data that we have collected from the field of production field with the different values of life cycle assessment database and industries that are available, and also based on our research. And making a long story short, companies that are normally producing the item by leveraging on a third-party supplier, they can start at the very beginning of their design process of the item. So based on their sketch, on the sketch of their product and the indication of the materials, they can inject all this information about the shape, about the gram per square meter, about the different kind of materials they are using, about the sourcing hub, about the different kind of transportation they are using from point A to point B, and immediately the software can measure in a precise way the carbon footprint of the product. And this gives the possibility to the company to immediately adjust the materials or the sourcing hubs or the shape of the product or the components like bottom, zip, or whatever, in order to select the one and the options that are provided automatically by the software in order to immediately reduce the carbon footprint. And this is something that the company can immediately do by themselves with the data that they have available. And normally in the field of carbon measurement, the data that are used are divided in two big families: primary data and secondary data. Our software are capable to manage both of them. What is the secondary data and the primary data? Let's say that the companies know that a certain phase of production, I don't know, for instance, fabric production is done in China, but they don't know exactly the name of the sub-supplier because they do not have the visibility on the name of the sub-supplier. In this case, our software can give immediately the data using the secondary data. Because our software goes so much in detail of the steps of each process, we can use secondary data and obtain reliable data. When the company knows the name of the supplier and can have the information about the primary data of the energy consumption or specific indication of that specific step, they can override the secondary data with primary data. But at least they can have immediately the calculation. Just to give a sense, today the business model is based on leveraging on consultants that help the company to perform the calculation. Normally, because I was on the other side of the let's say of the line, because I was part, I work a lot of years for multinational company, and we hire a consultant and a consultant to elaborate one calculation for one product category. They normally take 3 to 4 weeks and cost a lot. In our case, because
financially that would be crazy.
And if you change something, for instance, if you want to change of that pair of shoes, the kind of leather from cow leather to sheep leather, everything starts from zero. In our case, you can do everything in few seconds, and you can have a certified data, because all our software are certified based on the most important and recognized international protocols.
That's amazing.
So what will this look like for consumers? You know, we've got this digital passport coming into play. You've got the option to be able to provide more visibility behind the impact, the climate impact, or not
carbon
climate,
usage.
carbon usage. How will the consumer be able to understand the rating, and what is required for the importer into the EU to share with the consumer?
Absolutely, this is the fundamental questions of the discussion, because and this is also in line with the Green Claim Directive of the European Commission. Starting from July 2023, so starting from a month ago, in Europe, of course, there is a rolling period for companies to be compliant with that. But at least in Europe, you cannot anymore advertise. Let's talk about a shirt that is a sustainable shirt, sustainable material, eco-friendly production. They cannot anymore advertise this product without specifying in reality with concrete scientific data what we are talking about. Let's imagine today a consumer. You are in front, you are going into a department store, and you are in front of 2 different model of shirts. Both of them, they have the same shape, and but they are 2 different brands. One is saying that is done with 15% recycled cotton and produced in China, shipped with, vessel. Another one is done with 30% polyester recycled and is water friendly, meaning that production process does not consume too much water, but is shipped with, flight, and they are produced in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Romania. Both of them, they are claiming that are sustainable, but the consumer, they don't know. So the important is to base everything on a number. So if you are, let's imagine the same situation, and you have in front the 2 shirts that we are talking about, one is saying that is 8 kilo CO2, and the other one has produced in their production process 15 kilo of CO2. Okay, now it's better. The consumer can immediately understand that all the effort of companies in order to be more sustainable, at the end of the production process, one generate 8 kilo of CO2, and the other one emitted 15 kilo of CO2. So the two, between the two, of course, one is better than the other. And everything has to be measured based on scientific based target, SBTI.
Is that rating going to be on a hang tag, on an interior label? Where's that going to be?
The digital product passport, despite today the regulation is not clearly indicating the way on how the information must be transferred to the consumer, but today the most common recognized and adopted solution by companies is a QR code that is displayed on the product, can be a QR code applied on the labeling or on a hand tag of the product, but anyway, it has to be something that can immediately catch by the consumer. Normally today, everyone has a smartphone, so by scanning the QR code, the consumer has the right to have all the information about the product. Meaning, on the product, on the QR code, or through the QR code, the consumer should be capable to understand from where the raw material has been picked from where the raw material has been manufactured, can be one country, two countries, depending on the different kind of steps during the production process. What have been the transportations used to move the product to the consumer, the packaging, the sustainability on the packaging, the microplastics that are released by the product during the usage, during the laundry phase, not only during the production, but especially later, once the consumer wash the garment, and of course the carbon footprint. So all this information needs to be summarized in one data. The data is the carbon footprint of the product. So the consumer will decide.
And so you mentioned it'll get a rating. What would be like a good rating, and what would be like somebody would go, oh my God, that's terrible?
Sure. This is a question that a lot of our customers are placing to us. And, our reply is the following, at least in Europe, but, today, once you go to a grocery store and you want to buy some food, I don't know, whatever, at least there is on the etiquette the indication of the calories of the food. And today you are used of that because now today is already, 10, 15 years that there is this regulation to indicate the calories of the food. So the level of sugar, the level of fat, the level of oil. And now the consumer is used to understand if there is a high level of calories. And they said, oh, wow, we are talking about, 500 calories for this food. Maybe it's too much. Today, the fashion industry is, compared to food, 15 years behind, meaning that it's difficult today to say if a pair of pants should be 5 kilo or 10 kilo, because today no one is measuring. It's a journey, as Bret said. So maybe in 2 years from now, once the company has started measuring everything, we will understand what is the acceptable level of every single garment.
And we'll see progression.
Sorry, Bret?
We'll see progression. We'll see that at one point it starts here, and as sustainable initiatives get adopted, we'll see that 10 kg pant might move to 8, and 8 may move to 6, or, I think it's...
Here's where I get confused. We're talking about the carbon impact, but there's other ecological impacts as well, where there's a little bit of conflicting initiatives.
Yeah, this is where it gets confusing because cotton, being a very thirsty crop, being hydrophilic, and polyester, you look at those two things. Some studies have said that a cotton shirt will use about 4.6 to 4.8 kilograms for carbon usage. And polyester will be about 5.3. They're almost the same. But when you look in terms of carbon usage,
Right.
But when you look at these other initiatives like microparticulates, filling landfills, polyester clearly has more damage to the environment than a cotton garment will. So measuring it, this is absolutely a great question, because this tells you that, or kind of further advises what a complicated landscape we're dealing with. Because if you're simply measuring by carbon usage, then you're not really telling the whole picture, because there are some initiatives that are more eco-friendly for the world that use more carbon. And so how do you wrestle with that, Giulio?
Of course, so far we have focused on carbon. Of course, into our softwares, there are also, the possibility to measure the water consumption, for instance. But once we talk about chemicals, for instance, because in Europe, at least there is the REACH, that is the registration, evaluation, authorization, and conflicting hazardous chemicals, so very strict regulation. Every single chemical comes from petroleum, oil, and so we can measure them based on CO2. It is true that CO2 is not only the unique element that we need to consider. Of course, there are other, like water consumption, for instance, but based on the upcoming regulations of Europe, there is another level that we need to add to our discussion. Based on our software, we can measure the environmental impact of the software, and we cover everything, and the company are safe with that. On the other side, the European Commission asks companies to audit the factories on the different suppliers that are used. Because, even if you are producing a pair of pants that produce half of the carbon footprint compared to another factory, but on this factory, you are not compliant in terms of safety, in terms of labor child regulation, in terms of health regulation. Of course, this is not possible, and this is not good at all. So companies are required, at least big companies at the beginning, so companies that pass certain thresholds, at least in Europe, are required, starting from, let's say, mandatory starting from 2027, but most of the company are now starting today in performing audits. They are required to report, to first understand every single step in their production process. Today, the majority of the company, unfortunately, they only know the tier 1 supplier, so from where they receive the product, but they have no full visibility on the suppliers that are behind them. And so they need to go through the supply chain, understand every single step of production, who is doing what, and perform audit in order to verify the compliance of the work done. The final, what we are envisioning, we are talking about, of course, the digital product passport. The final, let's say, ideal digital product passport will be a document that will incorporate everything. The environmental footprint of the product and let's say, a score that needs to be identified, the rules based on how we determine the score of the production of the supply chain. So let's say a pair of pants will have 3 kilo of CO2 and score A in terms of sustainability. It's like in US at the restaurants that there are the score of the restaurants in terms of cleaning, no? If I'm not mistaken, A, B,
sure.
C, D. If you go to a
Right.
restaurant that has A, you immediately see the A at the entrance. If you go to a restaurant that maybe is not a B, C, maybe you don't see the score. But this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense.
does.
And as we talked about earlier, this is a journey. It's
Yeah.
going to start somewhere. People are going to figure things out. And that's great because, you know, Edmond is going to have this ability to now incorporate all these other facets probably as that future continues, because as someone picks up your software, they're going to want that to be kind of comprehensive. It is amazing that, you know, when you talk about what you've put together, how long did it take you to compile? I mean, it just
my
sounds like a
gosh.
monumental task, Giulio.
It took a lot of time and is not finished because just this week we have talk on how to improve and modify the software in order to be compliant with the upcoming regulations. So it has been a very long journey. Of course, this is something that we start years ago in doing. It is already 3 years that we are working on elaborating the collecting information, the database, and we sell the software in SaaS, meaning software as a service. What does it mean? This means that every time that, based on our research, we find a new material, an updated version, an updated production process, we immediately inject this information into the software. The responsibility to keep the database and the information updated and compliant is our responsibility. And we are very proud because once we have created those set of software and we are elaborating new one, we have asked a third party auditors, TUV Ryland, that is it is an international company, to audit and verify if our software are compliant with the international standard and regulations. And we are proud to say that all our software today, they receive positive assessment in terms of GHG protocol, in terms of ISO, so ISO 14064 and 67, and PAS 50, which are the most complex and robust international standard on carbon accounting. How they do? The audit process is very long, not because it takes a lot of time from our side, but for instance, just to give a sense of how powerful are our software. We give to the auditor the access to our new software, for instance, handbags or luggage, and they perform the calculation of a specific product that we decide together or they ask us to create. They perform the calculation based on the traditional way. So look into the life cycle assessment database, performing research, and normally they take 3 to 4 weeks to arrive to their own number. And then they use our software, they put the information into our software, in 3 seconds, they obtain the result. And if the result is not different is a range between 5 to 7%, they said, okay, the result, your software is good. So we are talking about 3 to 4 weeks compared to 3-4 seconds. So just to give a sense.
That's amazing.
Unbelievable. A question. So PLMs have evolved a lot in our industry, project lifestyle management systems. And there's a lot of information that some of the better companies are putting into that. All of the trims, all of the, all the bill of materials, all the fabric. Many times there's calculations in terms of all the full grade, consumptions and all of that. Does your software today plug into a PLM so it can pull that information automatically and then give a score much quicker instead of manually inputting all that information today?
This is a very good question, and the reply is yes. Our software are equipped with an API, Access Programming Interface, and this API is API REST, is a technical name, is capable, and we are capable to connect with every kind of repository. It can be a PLM, can be ERP, can be BI. So based on from where the information is available, we can connect with those databases and pull the information, meaning the company can automatically pull the information. So, and this is the most sophisticated way to use the software, so connecting directly with the database. The second way that our customers are using to use our software is to upload massively a very simple Excel file. So they collect the information by themselves and then they upload the file. This is also useful because unfortunately, in the majority of the company we are talking with the corporate sustainability department, which is more sensible to these projects. And they normally say, we love your software, but we need to find a way to do not involve our IT department because our IT department will not give any kind of priority over the next few years. So that's why this is unfortunately probably one of the common things across companies. So they ask us the possibility to upload an Excel file, and of course we gave them the possibility to upload the Excel file. So, and then of course there is the possibility for small businesses, maybe mom and pop, small laboratory that maybe they don't have a sophisticated IT department to manually input the data, as we said. Normally, medium and big companies are interfacing our software with their ERP or PLM.
That's wonderful. That makes, you look at this task and you think that's an impossible task. And what you guys have done and put things together this way has really allowed people to step into this journey a lot easier and then, implement all these other things. In America, we're seeing, and we're always behind, I hate to say that, but we're always behind on the sustainable train. But we're finding more and more companies that are focused on wanting to make the change to more sustainability. There's more technology every day to make it easier. And it's fantastic to be able to speak to you, let people know about Edmond Climate Network.
Yes.
How do they get a hold of you? Let's say this really trips their trigger. They really want to be able to connect and implement that software for themselves. Can you give people some information on where to get a hold of you so that they can take the next step?
Absolutely. The most common way for them to reach us is to go on our website. So www.edmondclimate.com and book demo. We organize a demo. We share all the information or on LinkedIn. Edmond Climate Network. We are also present on Instagram. So, of course, we are available. We are using all the different kind of networks available and social media. And they can, of course, email me directly. We will find a way to share. But if they click on book a demo with us, they can immediately receive a confirmation of the demo to be done, or receive materials, everything.
Thank you. And you're based in Ticino, Switzerland.
We are based in Ticino, in Switzerland. One thing that we have not said today, is that we have been capable to perform these and elaborate those software, not because we are, let's say, alone. We are working in partnership with the University of Southern Ticino, of Southern Switzerland, and we are part of the Swiss Innovation Park. Swiss Innovation Park is one of the most important institutions in Switzerland for research, and we are proud to say that we are inside this kind of network. So we have a long-term relationship with the university, so we leverage on researchers, we have students with us, and we are very happy of staying in Switzerland and working in Switzerland.
That's great.
Thanks, Giulio.
Thank you for joining us today. Congratulations on this, as Bret put it, monumental achievement. And we'll make sure in our show notes to provide information on how people can find you to learn more. Once again, thank you for joining us on this episode of Clothing Culture. Do not forget to subscribe to stay apprised of upcoming episodes.